Wow, has it been a while since I have posted a video on this channel. As you can see, a lot has changed, a lot of growth, um, and I want to share that with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the past and show you the steps that I took to get to this point in the garden before we can move on to the present and deep dive into the things that I have in the garden and what are my plans. I'm going to start out by removing this fence here. It's just temporary to keep the critters out. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and measure. I believe I did 20 feet, and then I went back through and marked every 4 feet where I want a T-post. And then I had Adam come out and just double check my measurements to make sure everything was square. And then I took this roto hammer, I guess, and drilled a hole in every spot that I wanted a T-post, just to make it easier to drive the T-posts into the ground. This is one corner here of the garden, and then this is another corner over here where one of the gates is going to go. So I'm just laying out the corner T-posts, and then I'll go back through and add T-posts that are in between. And that's my little dog Howard down there. He's a brown Merle Chihuahua. And then I'm going to measure again just to make sure, and then go back through and do every 4 feet where I want my T-posts. Once I have all my T-posts in, I'm going to take this hardwire cloth and just kind of lightly attach it to the greenhouse. And then I'm going to go through and start zip tying to the T-posts. I'm using this baling twine to try and pull it tight. And then once I get it tight enough, I put the zip tie through. I have to walk from around basically because I'm doing this by myself. And that's my dog Ozzy. He's kind of confused as to why there's a fence in between us and he cannot get to me because he is attached at the hip. Here I am going to be creating an arch. And again, being that I am doing this by myself, I have to figure out the best way to do this because it's going to be arched up and it's spring loaded. So I am just attaching it very lightly to the T-post just to kind of hold it in place while I walk it to where I want it to be. And then I take that clamp and I use that to hold it in place while I get everything kind of situated and in place. And once I have a good feel for how I want it, I am going to measure here just to add the last T-post to hold this thing in place. I found this short T-post that I'm going to use just to keep the last corner where I want it. And then I'm going to attach it. And I know zip ties are not the best option. They will deteriorate over time, but for now they are holding up. I'm adding the last T-post for the second arch here, and it's a little bit like the leaning tower, so I am going to straighten it up a little bit. I'm going to get everything out of the way so that way it's easier to put this into place. I did not move that red pot right there, and that did end up getting knocked over, but no big deal. And I'm going to do the same thing here, just sort of walk this thing into place where I want it. And once it's there, I'm going to also zip tie it in place. From here, I am just removing all the planter boxes and doing some weeding so I can get the garden situated and laid out how I want it and make sure that it is weed-free and ready for the next step. This section here is the last part that I have to weed before it's good to go. And we can get to putting down the straw, which is this next step here. Straw may not be the best option, but it has worked wonderful for me. Yes, it does sprout here and there, but nothing too bad to where I can't control it and just pull it as it sprouts. But yeah, it's kept the weeds down and I really appreciate that. The next thing that I'm going to do is remove all of the planter boxes that are in here. Once I get all the straw laid out where I want it, I am putting back these pots here, which is where I am planting the tomatoes. And that's where they're going to be for the duration of the growing season. Here I am showing that I'm adding drip system from the inside of the greenhouse to the garden. I do road trips during the summer, and I want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for my daughter and my husband to water while I'm gone. So I'm running the drip tube along the ground here and the back fence over here for the things that are in the pots. And then I'm going to punch a hole where I want the smaller tubing to go that will eventually water the plants. When this year's garden is over, I'm going to change out some of the drip heads that I'm currently using. This area here, I am teeing off from the main line so I can get water around the back perimeter of the garden. And again, I'm just tying the tube to the fence. Here you can sort of see it coming together. So now I'm going through and just picking out the plants that I want to add to the garden. Those are cucumbers, and then these are melons, and those are said tomatoes. And here is basically what the garden is going to look like. I've got most of the things planted out. And as you can see, the garden is now fully thriving. So as you just saw, I put a lot of work into this garden. It started out as just a flimsy little fence that I had surrounding my previous garden area. And what actually made me decide to go ahead and expand and use the fencing that I used was at the end of last year's garden, I found a baby rattlesnake sleeping in one of my flower beds or my garden beds. So that prompted me to do what I did here. And I have already gotten so much out of this garden, and every time I harvested something, I wanted to share that. And adding but I just never did. So yeah, I have gained so much from this garden, and I want to continue sharing that with you as long as you are willing to come along with me. So that is what I'm going to do. I appreciate you so very much, and I'll see you in the next one.